Number of confirmed coronavirus cases in Nigeria hit 1,273 as President Buhari gets briefing for next line of action.
We have given a technical recommendation first of all, from the medical point of view, and we have also brought the overall summary and position of the Presidential Task Force, which, as you know, comprises of not only the Health Ministry but other ministries.
Kano State government to prosecute lockdown violators in mobile courts.
Ogun State to enforce compulsory use of face masks from 1st of May.
If you don't wear a face mask, because in fact when we arrest you, we'll take you to an isolation center.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss COVID-19 with focus on the role, if any, of local governments.
Today is day 14 and the last of the extended 2-week lockdown of Lagos and Ogun states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, and exactly 4 weeks of the restriction order proclaimed by President Buhari in these three territories of Nigeria.
Well, Kirian, this means that Nigerians will be anticipating yet another presidential directive to know the next line of action. Now, with a growing number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria, Nigerians can almost predict another extension and possibly expansion of the restriction order. But that is left ultimately for the federal government to decide and announce, possibly much later in the day, based on the recommendations of the Presidential Task Force on coronavirus.
You did right, Kingsley, because with the prolonged lockdown and closure of the land, air and seaports, except for some essential services, Nigeria has moved beyond having imported cases of coronavirus to the unpleasant mode of community transmission, which the health authorities say is largely responsible for the rising cases, besides increased testing capacity. And to say the least, the trend of community transmission is worrisome.
Very worrisome indeed, Kirian, especially when you consider the fact that there are a number of persons at the grassroots level who apparently still do not believe that there is anything like coronavirus. And for them, life is business as usual nationwide. Even here in the Federal Capital Territory, despite the restriction order, places such as Jikoi, Kuje, Pegi, and Karimo, to mention a few, are still bustling with activities, perhaps for lack of capacity and personnel on the part of the security agencies to enforce the restriction order.
You are indeed right, and only recently an organization which also postponed its meeting earlier scheduled for Abuja city center due to the restriction order merely shifted the venue to one of the suburbs where the organizers felt there would be no hindrance as there is minimal or no enforcement of the restriction order beyond the highways and city centers. And this is why many are asking, what is the role of the local government in containing the coronavirus pandemic and complementing the efforts of other tiers of government? And Kingsley, it's not just a question of shifting venue. In some local government areas, there are social activities still going on, like weddings and football, local football, and others. So it's becoming so worrisome at this point in time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like there's no appreciation of why there is a lockdown in the first instance, and that the chief purpose of the lockdown is to arrest community transmission of COVID-19. But the questions you have asked with regard to the role of local governments is a pertinent one, because ideally local governments ought to be co-opted as part of the national response to a health crisis of this nature. That is, if the primary health care centers were equipped and functioning, even if they were to serve as isolation centers. But unfortunately, that isn't the case, as the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, that is the NCDC, has to dispatch emergency response teams from Abuja to various states. As we speak, Kano is experiencing multiple deaths and mass burials with no explanations or clues more than 1 week after.
And Kingsley, you just mentioned the seeming nonchalance to the pandemic at the grassroots, and one wonders if this would not have been addressed if these were proper or if there were proper channels of communication and information dissemination at the local government level. There's also lack of social distancing and observance of personal hygiene measures in the markets, which of course fall under the purview of the local governments.
Of course, the local government is the closest to the people and ordinarily ought to be able to provide baseline data that will facilitate the distribution, say, of palliatives at this critical time. But where is the local government in the fight against COVID-19? And ordinarily, what should be its complementary roles in managing a pandemic of this magnitude? Are the local governments inactive and forgotten as a tier of government even at this critical time?
Say that again, Kingsley, because many of them are dysfunctional at the moment. Well, these questions and more we shall pose to our guests as we discuss the role of local governments and COVID-19 on Good Morning Nigeria today. Welcome to the program. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to the program, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, and we are Africa's largest television network. We are broadcasting here from our Abuja headquarters studios. In the course of the program, we have our regular complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's take the highlights of the morning news, and here is Ifema Ojinta. Good morning, Ifema.
Good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. As at 11:50 p.m. last night, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, announced 91 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria, increasing the total number of confirmed cases to 1,273. Out of the 91 new cases, 43 are in Lagos, 8 in Sokoto, 6 in Taraba, 5 each in Kaduna and Gombe, 3 each in Ondo, FCT, Edo, Oyo, Rivers and Bauchi, 2 cases in Osun and 1 case each in Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Ebonyi and Kebbi states. 239 patients have been discharged, with an increase in number of deaths to 40 so far. President Muhammadu Buhari on Sunday received an update from the Minister of Health, Osagi Ehanire, and the Director General of the National Center for Disease Control, Chikwe Ihekwazu, on the rising number of confirmed cases of coronavirus in the country and ongoing efforts to stem the tide.
We have given a technical recommendation first of all, from the medical point of view, and we have also brought the overall summary and position of the Presidential Task Force, which, as you know, comprises of not only the Health Ministry but other ministries. And we have aggregated the opinion that we have, weighing the health and the social and economic factor and everything.
Everybody is working very hard to solve this problem, because we know that testing really is the bottleneck at the moment into increasing the number of people that we can afford care. But it's a complex process. There are no easy solutions. I can see that some people are already procuring rapid diagnostic test kits. They don't work as far as we know. So I really recommend that we all stick to the national strategy, build on it, support its expansion, and together we'll get on top of this.
And it's day 14 of the second phase of the lockdown, and Nigerians wait for the next line of action as violators are apprehended in FCT.
We had in the mobile code today is about 25, you understand, and 5 of them were actually charged and then fined, and about 13 of them were committed to community services, and 1 was discharged, and some others were adjourned. This thing does not move except it is moved by human beings, moved by agents, you understand. And then the substance too, because when you touch a vehicle, definitely it's like transferring the movement of the virus. But if everybody decide to pay this, make this sacrifice now, on our parts, sit down at home, within some hours, if this thing dies down and we don't have cases again, the better for us.
Meanwhile, the Kano State government is to establish 10 mobile courts to prosecute lockdown offenders as part of measures to curtail the spread of COVID-19 in the states. Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, who said this at a press briefing in Kano, also affirmed that about 300,000 households will benefit from palliative measures put in place to cushion the effect of the lockdown on the vulnerable across the states. Still staying with Kano, the state government on Sunday acknowledged recent deaths in Kano, promising that Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje has already directed the State Ministry of Health to conduct a thorough investigation into the immediate and remote causes of the deaths. In a statement, the State Commissioner of Information, Mohammed Garba, said although investigation into the cause of the deaths is still ongoing, preliminary reports from the State Ministry of Health indicates that the deaths are not connected to the COVID-19 pandemic. The government advised the people of Kano State not to panic as the mystery will soon be unraveled. And as Nigeria continues to battle the coronavirus pandemic, the Ogun State government says it will begin enforcement of compulsory usage of face masks in the state from 1st of May 2020. The state governor, Dapo Abiodun, who disclosed this while addressing journalists, said violators will be arrested and made to spend 14 days in an isolation center.
We will arrest you if you don't wear a face mask. Because, in fact, when we arrest you, we'll take you to an isolation center. Because we will believe that you want to intentionally inflict or afflict someone with COVID-19. That's why you're not wearing your face mask. So we are taking an isolation center. We isolate you for 14 days, during which we make you do community service. So, in your best interest, please ensure that if you are going out, you wear your face mask.
And now to security matters. The Ekiti State government has confirmed the abduction of the state's commissioner for agriculture, Folorunsho Olabode, by suspected bandits at about 7 p.m. on Sunday, April 26, 2020, while transiting from Ado-Ekiti to his hometown, Iye-Ekiti. Confirming the kidnap in a statement, Ekiti State Commissioner for Information and Values Orientation, Muyiwa Olumilwa, said from initial reports the kidnappers shot one person in abducted commissioner's entourage. Governor Kayode Fayemi has mandated the security agencies in the state to ensure prompt and safe release while assuring residents that adequate measures are ongoing to maintain the peace and security of the state. Meanwhile, police operatives have arrested a deadly criminal gang allegedly responsible for the kidnap and murder of a Catholic seminarian, Nnadi Michael, of the Catholic Good Shepherd Major Seminary at Goningora and Kakao in Chukun local government area of Kaduna State. A statement by the Force Public Relations Officer, DCP Frank Mba, reveals that on the 9th of January 2020, the criminal gang stormed the Catholic seminary and kidnapped 4 seminarians, murdered one of them in cold blood, and released the remaining 3 on 31st January 2020, having obtained a ransom. The remains of the 4th seminarian were found in a bush. The suspects, Tukur Usman, Shehu Bello, and Mustafa Mohammed, all of Igabi local government area of Kaduna State, were arrested after several months of intensive and extensive intelligence-led operations by crack detectives of the Intelligence Response Team. The suspects have confessed to several other random operations along Abuja-Kaduna Expressway, where they kidnap, kill, and mob motorists, collecting ransom and valuables running into millions of naira. And as the armed forces of Nigeria sustains its onslaught against terrorists in the northeast, the Air Task Force of Operation Lafia Doli has executed airstrikes, neutralizing several Islamic states of West African province ISWAP fighters at Kolaram on the fringes of the Lake Chad in Borno State. In a statement by Coordinator Director Directorate of Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, the operation was conducted on 25th April 2020 based on credible intelligence reports indicating that some of the ISWAP leaders and fighters had converged on the settlement for a meeting. Nigeria Air Force fighter jets and surveillance aircraft were then mobilized to attack the location overhead the target, leading to the neutralization of several terrorists. The armed forces of Nigeria say it will sustain the onslaught in order to restore peace. And that's the morning news. The program continues with Kinsley and Kirian after this break. Good morning.
Improved household hygiene is essential to keep your family safe. Did you know that the sodium hypochlorite, the active ingredient in hypo bleach, is equipped to fight viruses and germs? Add some bleach to water, soak a clean napkin in diluted bleach, and wipe off germs from common contact surfaces. Wipe off with hypo. Disinfect your home with hypo bleach always.
Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
As you can see, I'm at home, I'm reading a book. When I get bored, I watch movies. Life has not stopped. Together we can beat this thing. All we have to do is make sure we do the necessary things, which is wash our hands, use hand sanitizer, frequently wash your hands with soap. Please avoid crowded environments, crowded places. If you must head out maybe to get groceries, use the face mask. So please stay safe, stay responsible, and stay at home.
Did you know that using bar soap and water protects against viruses? Many viruses are surrounded by an envelope with receptors that enable them to enter a human cell and cause infection. Bar soap destroys the outer layer of the virus and effectively removes it and reduces your chances of contracting the virus. Protect your family from the spread of viruses. Wash your hands using bar soap and water. Brought to you by Medifax and Dental.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Childhood non-stop. Non-stop childhood. Let's go.
Oh, stop. They are germs. You'll fall sick. Daughter, why don't you stop them?
Mom, stopping the kids from playing stops the learning. That's why we stop the germs.
Indeed, Safeguard fights against germs. Safeguard removes 99% of germs.
Why don't you stop them? We have to stop. Not the kids, but...
You're on to Good Morning Nigeria, and next is business news. Kolo Mohammed is our guide.
Hello and welcome. Good to have you along. The drug and vaccine for COVID-19 may have not been arrived at just yet. However, one instrument applied by the city of Wuhan in China successfully stopped its spread plus community infection. In the absence of drugs and technology, Wuhan says discipline is the instrument that has led to reopening of the city's business and removal of thriving tendencies of COVID-19.
What China controlled COVID-19 mainly is because of discipline. Take Wuhan for example. It is because of discipline Wuhan locked down the whole city, everybody staying home. And everyone followed the instruction of staying home. And then, even after the pandemic of the COVID-19, Wuhan now declared free movement. Business and all other activities has started. And at the same time, when Wuhan, they went up to any other state of China, province of China, the Wuhanese, they discipline themselves to quarantine themselves for 2 weeks, just to show the commitment from themselves to the other part of China, even to the whole world.
And finally, today is Monday. As usual, activities on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange for the week opens today. As always, NTA Business News will bring you closing figures subsequently. I am Kolo Mohammed. Please stay safe, adhere to social distancing. Lockdown means healthy all of us. Many thanks.
All right, now it's time for us to take a look at the papers in our newspaper review segment.
We now have Bayo Atoyebe, our newspaper reviewer, with us. As always, you're welcome, Bayo.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, let's begin with the leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper. NMPC oil firms to build medical facilities in states within or with 21 billion naira. The story is on page 6, as well as military kills several ISWAP fighters in airstrikes. Both stories are on page 6 of leadership newspaper. The lead story on the paper this morning: uncertainty as Nigerians await President Buhari's lockdown review. With 4 riders, Kano loses another 2 high-profile persons, insists deaths caused by meningitis, diabetes, and others. APC, PDP trade tackles. Boa Group donates 3.3 billion naira to Kano and Lagos states. 13 more Nigerians return from Togo. Kaduna extends lockdown by 30 days. Oyo senior workers resume today. And of course, the photo story is that of President Buhari with the Minister of Health at the briefing in the villa. And now the story on the right-hand side of the newspaper, just besides the photo story: NJC asks PMB to confirm Domban Mensum Appeal Court President. And now at the bottom of the newspaper, we have other stories there. Vitamin D can suppress COVID-19 infection. That's according to a new study. It's on page 2. Rainstorm destroys 271 houses in Kaduna State. That's captured fully on page 7. MRA IPC petition CCB over violation of journalists' rights. It's on page 11. We didn't send weevil-infested rice to Oyo. That's according to Customs Service. It's on page 7. Also on page 7 is this. May-June 2020 WASC not cancelled, says WAEC. Kinsley.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Trust newspaper. Most of the stories you read are also here. Just below the nameplate of the Daily Trust newspaper, Kano moves to unravel cause of mass death. That's page 6. And House of Reps resume plenary tomorrow. Details can be found on page 8. Late story says with a kicker, as COVID-19 lockdown ends today, pressure mounts on Buhari to relax restrictions. And you have 5 riders to that headline. Let economic activities go on. That's according to the NLC. It's dangerous to allow people to move around. That's attributed to doctors. Talks on reopening economy ongoing. Again, that's according to the federal government. Experts chart way forward. And business owners fear economy may collapse. You can see the photograph there. It says Almajire rushed to board an open vehicle provided by the Plateau State government to return them to their states of origin. And that was in Jos yesterday. Also there, Kaduna extends lockdown for 30 days and Boa Foundation commits additional 3.3 billion naira to COVID-19 fight.
Well, let's start with the news that has dominated the nation for the past since February 17th, and that is COVID-19. Yesterday, Nigeria recorded 96 new cases, and the total confirmed, therefore, has come to 1,273. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control indicate that 5 new deaths has been recorded, bringing the total now to 40. 4 states have registered first cases. They are Ebonyi, Bayelsa, Kebbi, Taraba, and also and among them, Gombe that just came in only last week has recorded a huge number of infections. Lagos so far had 43, Sokoto had 8. So far, 10,918 persons have been tested, 1,273 have been inactive, and 239 persons have been discharged. So far, Lagos has had 731 cases, Abuja 141, and that leaves Kano with 77. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control says it requires more test kits, especially the ribonucleic acid COVID-19 test kits. Many more are required. The Center for Disease Control explained that the test kits are the one that are standard that is required. They indicated the rapid diagnostic test kits which people are recommending is not as effective as the one recommended and the one they are using. Meanwhile, there are concerns about persons dying in Kano. The Minister of Health and the Director General of NCDC met with the President, and among the briefing they provided with the President was also the status of the COVID-19 in Nigeria. The Kano State government, meanwhile, has put up a statement to rule out COVID-19 with the incidences of deaths reported across the state. While they are waiting for the outcome of investigation, they are opining that there are speculations, and from what they consider as posthumous autopsy by way of person-to-person inquiry, they are confirming that there are cases of hypertension, diabetes, meningitis, as well as acute malaria that seem to have been the causes of the death from the relations of the persons they interviewed. But not leaving anything to chance, they have also set out a committee to investigate. Meanwhile, there has not been any test result from Kano since Friday. This is because the test center was shut down and required decontamination because some person working there had apparently also been infected. But the Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, confirmed that that will be open today. There is also initiative with Kano, Bayero University Kano, to open another test center. This will go a long way to enhance the testing capabilities in Kano. Yeah. The Kano state government too is making initiative to put in place some other supplementary testing to arrest the challenging situation in Kano.
But as of last week, we heard about this decontamination of Kano testing center, and one would have thought that by now it would have been open, but he said it's going to be open today. Right, but again, as of last week as well, we also heard that some tests were being sent to Abuja and just from Kano, you know, expecting that the results will come out, because it is worrisome really that in the past few days we've not gotten test results from Kano, because Kano is gradually and steadily, you know, becoming an epicenter for coronavirus, you know, considering, you know, the fact that it's a highly populated state, and of course that the instruments that are required, you know, to combat COVID-19 are not on ground as they're expected to be, considering the population of the state. So it's a dicey situation. And that brings us to, there's one headline that Kingsley read. The NLC said that business should continue as usual. I'm afraid that if that happens, I don't know, only God knows, because if you study what happened elsewhere, you find out that if you open up carelessly, especially in some very highly prone areas, it's going to be very problematic for the nation.
Well, yes, it's a dilemma. The lockdown was occasioned by the need to keep people at home so that we can contain the spread of the community spread, because apparently by closing the borders and the airports, we have shut down the importation of COVID-19. But what about the community spread? And the only way to stop that is occasioned by that. That was supported by the state governors. If you recall last week at the Governors Forum, after they had their online Governors Forum meeting, they chose to close down states interborder for another 14 days. The dilemma now is that the last lockdown provided for Lagos, Ogun, and FCT is ending today. Would there be need for another lockdown? If you ask the expert, they will tell you that one of the ways to keep on containing the virus is the lockdown that will keep people at home. Because as far as we are going, we have not reached the peak. And unless we reach the peak and the curve is beginning to descend, it will be relatively unsafe to lift the lockdown. Here is the dilemma. NLC and Labour and others are agitating that you can't lock people down for too long, especially those who depend on their daily activities to earn a living. For over 28 days now, you have locked them down, there's nothing to do, and if they don't get access to palliative, you have incidences in crime that will be increasing. So it's a balancing act, and I think that is why the president requires all the necessary advice, and the advice is being provided for him by the Governors Forum and the governors too at another level. For instance, the Northern Governors Forum are saying that they are not in support of total lockdown because this is the outset of the rainy season and there's a need for farmers to go back to the farm. If farmers don't go to the farm after the COVID-19, we'll be stirred with challenges of food scarcity. So it is a critical balancing act.
Well, Kaduna is in the north. Kaduna state government has already announced further extension of the lockdown for 30 days. And there are good reasons that the state government has given. Ghana, which is next door, relaxed its restriction. And already there are over 270 cases, new cases of COVID-19 that it has recorded. And this is at a time when Kano is getting on the map aggressively in terms of the suspicion of coronavirus cases in the city or in the metropolis. I mean, there are 6 professors are said to have died in the past 1 week. Of course, there are no autopsy performed except for what you said a while ago, and that headline is on page 6 of the Daily Trust. It says, Kano moves to unravel cause of mass deaths, begin verbal autopsy. That's to say autopsy by word of mouth. I tell you what happened to this person. This person had malaria, had diabetes, had hypertension. Well, these are some of the underlying causes, the so-called comorbidities that we have seen elsewhere, accounting for the climb in fatalities arising from COVID-19. Take a look at page 28, for instance. There's a photograph on page 28 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Unfortunately, that's one of the professors that passed away yesterday in Kano. It says funeral prayer for Professor Balarabe Mekaba of the Faculty of Mass Communication at Bayo University. Now, the funeral was at his family house in Fage in Kano. And you can see the people there, of course, pray for the repose of his soul before he was laid to rest. So, if this is happening and the Kano state government or the NCDC has not ascertained the cause of the mysterious deaths. Last week on Good Morning Nigeria, we had a Kano official, who was part of our conversation.
He was the chairman of the task force in Kano.
And the questions we were asking, surrounded all of these unexplained deaths. And he said, that there is usually no record of deaths or of burials.
He said that people die on a daily basis. But we're asking about the preponderance of the people that are dying now in Canada. But he said, look, it is a natural phenomenon that people die.
It could be natural, Kyria, because the grave diggers, they are saying that their work rate has increased recently.
All of a sudden.
Yes.
But again, there's also another report that has indicated that this is not the first time. They said it happened in 2016, 2017, 2018, and even last year, 2019, where you have this pace of death, particularly, when we transit from the Harmattan period, the heat area, that is when meningitis sets in. And from some of the report they have indicated here now, these persons are aged people who had underlying causes, some hypertension, some diabetes, and therefore they were prone to meningitis and other ailments. They're even reporting acute fever and typhoid.
Opportunistic ailments.
So unless they conclude their investigation, we may never can tell. There could be even an underlying epidemic that we are not aware of that's trying to rear its head.
Exactly. Okay, can we now go to the editorial?
Yeah.
Okay, editorial for today is from Daily Sun newspaper. It's actually on page 11. The title is Rescue Plans for the Economy. That's to say, what happens after COVID-19? Of course, the economy has been hit, and most nations of the world are already targeting what plans will they put in place to be able to recover from the economic shock that was precipitated by coronavirus. And so in Nigeria here, of course, we have our own peculiarities, when it comes to the economy and how it's run. So let's start from Bayo on this editorial.
The editorial by, I think, the Sun is saying that there is need to rescue the economy. And it's pointing out that the IMF has already predicted that we will suffer a recession of about 3%. We hope our economy will be resilient enough to be able to absorb the consequences of COVID-19. But the editorial is pointing out that already with 90 million living below the poverty line, after COVID-19, there's a lot more that needs to be done. And therefore, the editorial is happening on the fact that it is not enough for central bank to provide about 15 trillion naira to support infrastructure. There also has to be support for the agricultural sector and the economy to ensure that especially those in the informal sector can get back to work, so that you have the small scale, the medium scale, and enterprises can all bounce back and revive, because that is where the economy of Nigeria relies. You recall that in some 7 years ago, the Nigerians were rejoicing that we said Nigeria had rebased its economy and it was then projected to be the largest economy in Africa. What it then meant was that we were usually considering GDP and ignoring the informal sector. So during the term of Dr. Okunja-Iweala, after looking at the informal sector, that if it is duly considered, our economy will be the largest. Was not, but could be the largest in the continent. So there is a large chunk of the economy in the informal sector that is COVID-19 is delving serious devastation to, and something has to be done about that. That's the kernel of the editorial.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I don't think it was a projection that Nigeria's economy could be the largest on the African continent. On the basis of the rebasing, it was considered as the largest economy on the African continent. continent based on GDP. It wasn't a projection. It was that, look, on the basis of the metrics that were utilized, it was indeed the largest economy.
The World Bank and the IMF also concurred to that.
Absolutely. And you also saw that they brought in the service sector. Nollywood made some significant contribution, plus all of that. But I think that post-COVID-19, the president has an economic advisory council. So this is part of the assignment that the president should farm out to his economic advisory council to say, look, what are your projections? Sometimes we often repeat the claims by IMF. IMF doesn't run the Nigerian economy. I mean, the Nigerians run the Nigerian economy. Now, if IMF says that these are the numbers that we should be looking at, fine, that's advisory. But internally and in terms of hands-on, what are the recommendations that the Economic Advisory Council will give to the president, bearing in mind a panoramic view of all aspects of the economy, formal, informal, federal, state, and local governments, plus our international transactions?
I agree with you, because when you consider 2019, IMF World Bank came with a projection of about 2.1%, and the Nigerian economy, our economic experts projected 2.4%. Eventually, they had to come and agree with the Nigerian projection. But these things are not cast in steel. Already, you have the Economic Sustainable Committee, which is headed by the Vice President. They've been meeting throughout last week. They will be meeting this week with the Economic Advisory Council. And the whole intention is therefore to see post-COVID-19 what is in there for the economy.
What is clear is that Nigeria has the prerequisite knowledge of how to handle our economic situation, because of course we have professionals who have been in the business for a while. There's no saying the fact that Nigeria will find a way out of COVID-19 economic hit. I mean, I'm not too worried about it. We'll still remain the largest economy in Africa.
You see, oftentimes people compare Nigeria with other countries. For instance, Ghana, we compare Nigeria with. Ghana is not more than Oyo State put together. So Nigeria is big. And you know, when you have a big country, it is often said that the bigger the head, the bigger the headache.
Exactly.
All right. Baya Toyobi, we would like to thank you for being around today. See you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our item for discussion.
The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Ankara shopping with the right place. This one.
Oh wow, it's beautiful. Omo, this fabric, it go fade though.
The new area Ankara, it go take good care of it. And the price, cheap.
Try new Ariel on your Ankara and colors now.
Welcome, dear. Have you washed your hands?
Inside my house again. This thing not the key black man.
I don't know if it's misinformation or poor hygiene that will kill you first. Coronavirus is real, and good hygiene practice will save your life. Anyway, no hand washing, no eating.
I will not take care of it. I was one of the parents. Coronavirus is real and it's on the rise. But you can help yourself and help others to be safe. Remember, we can stop the spread. It's in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون.
The glorious month of Ramadan
And is here again, and we at Al Habibia Islamic Society once again call on all faithful to observe the physical and social distancing directive of the government to curb the spread of COVID-19. Always wash your hands with soap and water, use hand sanitizers and face masks when necessary, and stay at home. Observe your obligatory salat, tarawih, tahajjud, du'as, and askars with your families from the comfort of your home. Stay at home, stay safe, stop the spread of COVID-19. This message is from Al Habibia Islamic Society, from Allah to you, a light.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6 foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
Hello everyone, hope you are keeping safe by washing your hands with soap or using sanitizer. Stay at home, it's the responsible thing to do, and whilst you're at it, you can do anything to keep your body and your mind together. Grow a beard like me if you want to, but please, let's stay at home. It's the responsible thing to do.
The Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, under the leadership of its President General, His Eminence, the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Muhammad Saad Abubakar, CFR MNI, congratulates the Muslim Ummah on the commencement of the fasting of the month of Ramadan, beseeching Allah to grant us the blessings of the month and to inscribe us among the inhabitants of Al-Jannah. The Council has directed the suspension of congregational Taraweeh prayers, Majalis al-Tafsir, Quranic sessions, and i'tikaf seclusion in mosques during the month of Ramadan. Islamic scholars and organizations are to employ the electronic media for dissemination of tafsir and other da'wah activities. Janaza, washing, shrouding, prayer and burial of Muslim victims are to be carried out by officials of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, and other government health officials. Detailed guidelines on the suspension and the janaza are available on the Council's website and are being published in national dailies and sent to the federal and state governments as well as leadership of state councils and various Islamic organizations. The Quran says, "Make not your own hands contribute to your destruction." His Eminence the Sultan praised the Almighty Allah to preserve our lives beyond the Ramadan and grant us its blessings. Mr. Yusuf Nwoha, Director Administration, Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, announcer.
And the program is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our conversation this morning borders on COVID-19, the role of local government. And before we kickstart the conversation, here is a correspondent Aisha Obali with a backgrounder.
The issue of grassroots intervention, especially during this pandemic, is important, and many Nigerians have been asking questions on what the local government have been doing since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. However, local governments are known as the closest and the first line of public contact with people in various communities. More so, local government have more advantages in citizens' coverage and reach than other levels of government in terms of providing services. Hence, in the wake of any human concern like the COVID-19 pandemic, local government ought to be the first responders to the health and humanitarian effort, or at best be the conduit for other tiers of government to intervene. But this is far from the case at the moment. With the fear of community transmission, what are local governments doing to safeguard their constituents and ensure they adhere to social distancing measures? The local government, according to observers, can also bridge the gaps in terms of information dissemination and massive awareness through local media. The place of local government still begs the question in middle of a ravaging coronavirus pandemic. While at this critical period, local governments may want to complain of financial inadequacy, taking up responsibility would need a clear understanding of their roles and strategic mapping to complement other tiers of government. Broadly, there are three identifiable agendas of the federal government in the fight against the outbreak of COVID-19 in Nigeria, which includes restriction order, the lockdown, distribution of palliative to poorest of the poor, as well as testing and treatment of COVID-19 patients. Does the local government have operational roles to play within the spectrum of COVID-19 agenda? These and more questions will be answered by our guest on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, we have guests with us here in the studios as well as at our network centers to join us for this conversation. First, let's welcome Salau Nuhu Ozigi. He is the Director of Finance and Accounts of ALGON, which is the Association of Local Government Areas of Nigeria. But he's a member representing all the local governments and area councils on the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning, sir.
All right. Also here with us in the studios, one of our regular guests, Abdullahi Adamu Candido, who is Chairman, Abuja Municipal Area Council. Chairman, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's my pleasure. Good morning, Nigeria.
And joining us from our Sokoto studio is Professor Mohammed Bello Yarima, Professor of Applied Environmental Microbiology and Public Health. Good morning and welcome to our program.
Good morning, Kerry, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, we have from our Benin studio, Dr. Eric Osayande, Chairman, Igboba Oha, Local Government Council, Edo State. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, Kirian, now we understand that the Benin Center is not ready to join us for this conversation immediately. I mean, once access is clear, then we shall get Dr. Osayande to be part of the conversation. But let's begin broadly by taking a look at the Presidential Task Force, of which you are a member. I'm talking about Salau Ozigi. What exactly is being spelled out for the local governments, and what exactly are you contributing to the work of the Presidential Task Force?
Thank you very much. Globally speaking, the Presidential Task Force has committees that actually factor in the responsibilities of all the levels of government, as well as stakeholders and donors, in regards to to reduce the spread of COVID-19 to the local rural areas and the local communities. I, as a representative of the local government area councils in Nigeria, representing at the PTF, takes the responsibilities of strategizing initiatives at the risk communications and the community engagement functional team of the PTF. This risk communication and community engagement is the one to look at all strategies based on the protocols of the PTF to see that we curtail the spread of the COVID to the rural populace and the communities in Nigeria.
How is this translated into reality on the ground?
Yes, a lot of things has been done. The state government, for example, formed a committee, established a committee to look and manage the issues of COVID. And at the local government level, it's also synced down, where they had the local government sensitization and implementation committees. And these committees has members within the local community, the interest group within the local communities, like the traditional rulers, the community leaders, the religious clerics, and other like trade union, trade associations, every other interest group, student unions, they are all included, to make sure that they can have a control and management of all the issues as it concerns COVID within the local government level.
Okay, as we make progress, we'll find out how the measures have been cascaded down to the council areas in Nigeria. We're talking about 774 council areas in Nigeria. And of course, we also heard that in some council areas, business has been as usual during the lockdown. So as we make progress, we'll be able to now, investigate further to know whether all council areas are keyed into what you've just mentioned. But we are lucky to have a council chairman here with us. That's Abdullahi Adamo Kadido, who is, of course, Abuja Municipal Area Council, FCT. Now, are there specified rules for local government areas from the broadcast of the head of state? Was there any specific rules given to the local government areas with respect to the fight against COVID-19?
Well, Karian, I think from the presidential address of Mr. President, even if the local governments are not categorically defined to carry out this, carry out that, but from the summary of what he said, he is talking about, the people on how to ensure that they don't come into contact with this pandemic. And if you are talking about the people, then the first line of contact with these same people are the local councils, because over 70–80% of the people reside in the local councils. And therefore, this informs us, without even sending any directive to us to say, or guideline to say, these are what you should do. We already know that these are things we're supposed to do. First, we need to sensitize the people on the dangers, okay, of this pandemic. Two, we need to as well properly inform them, because we have the agents that can do this information. For instance, like the director of admin Algon said, you have the traditional rulers or domicile within the local councils in the rural areas. You have the religious clerics all within the local councils. And therefore, it behoves on the local councils now to say, okay, since this is what this pandemic is eating, then we need to now talk to these people to sensitize them. And then the local council now goes again to look at, collection centers of people, because people gather. Now, if you identify some of these areas, for instance, markets, all the markets in our rural areas, right, have, people that besiege the market on daily basis to make ends meet. Now, these are areas that at where the councils, the federal government cannot come there. The councils now need to go there to say, look, gentlemen, take note of this pandemic. It's ravaging the people, it's killing the economy, and therefore take care of your health. First, don't even come to the market. Don't gather any longer, or take precautionary measures against coming together so that you do business. So these are certain things that personally, of course, I deduce from the presidential speech to say, okay, what do we now do? The moment we got that speech, what we decided to do was to go around. Okay, we have our primary health care centers. We have to sensitize them so that their first line of contact with the patient who are coming, not because they are COVID patient, but because they have one element or the other, they take, give them information that here comes again another pandemic. Please do this to guard against it. Do that to guard against it. These are things that we do. Then we also go to the market. And then we spoke to our traditional rulers. We spoke to our opinion leaders in all the communities. Then we now, delegate our the contact responsibility to the honorable council who are elected. They represent the people at the council. So we send them down home to still preach on why and how we should, guard against COVID-19.
I just try to do a follow-up on this. Now, Abuja has a business network, that connects the entire council areas in Abuja, especially with respect to local markets. You do Kwarimo, for instance. That's a Tuesday market that is, is unprecedented. It's like all-commerce market, and a very interesting market as well. Now, are you collaborating with other council chairmen in Abuja FCT? Because, to be honest with you, we've had cases where people are still gathering, even having meetings, having prayer sessions and what have you.
Yes, I agree with you. The Minister of State, Federal Capital Territory, who coordinates this COVID attack and then palliative sort of committee, is directly monitoring and supervising our activities. And as far as the area councils are concerned, we are on daily basis in touch with one another. We have borders in between us. And therefore, for instance, AMAC, Abuja Municipal Council, has a lot of, windows that we had to do with, business with other area council, even with beyond the Federal Capital Territory. For instance, Karo here, the Nyanya and the old Karo, the new Karo, which is in Nasarawa State, you have a lot of chunk of people that reside in Mararaba. Mararaba is not in Federal Capital Territory, but 90% of those who stay in Mararaba do their business in the Federal Capital Territory, either as civil servants or traders. You go to Giri side, that is in Amak, but it's just bordering Gwagwalada Area Council. So we have a lot of coordination and we do things together. Sincerely, we do things together under the coordination of the Minister of State.
Well, Chairman Abdullahi Candido and Salahu Nuhu Ziggy, the key thing, you have outlined various bureaucratic structures that ordinarily ought to be activated or have been activated as part of the measures to cope with COVID-19. It's not too early to ask if you have had an impact assessment of the deployment of these bureaucratic structures, because the anecdotal evidence and just simple observation that everyone makes is that in places where ordinarily you have a lockdown, this is being flouted. In places where there is a prescription, in fact, worldwide now, social distancing, all of these are being observed more in the breach. And you still have persons, who are proclaiming that there is no coronavirus, that coronavirus is a myth. In the meantime, the body count is increasing.
Thank you. I agree at the initial point of this pandemic. People were confused. They cannot even identify what the symptoms are. And to a certain extent, the structures were just beginning to be put in place. Governors also had one or some different opinion initially, and at the end of the day, I think everything has been congruent, and we are all looking at it almost on the same page and on the same side on this matter of COVID, because the spread has expanded, and there are obvious reasons adduced to the increase, the exponential increase in the incidences that has happened right now. We discovered that the test centers and all of that has almost spread, almost 14, 15 of them all over the country, making it easy for more people to be tested and confirmed with symptoms of COVID. And with that, we also most recently discovered that 25% of even those that has caught this now were not initially. We thought it was only those who traveled that came in that had COVID-19. But now we discovered that from statistics available, almost 20-25% of the cases are those who do not even travel at all, which means that there's been transmission on person-to-person basis. And for that reason, even like the case we have in some states, people has even left the city center into their villages before they did some contact tracing to get them. So a lot of things is going on with the committee that has been set up at both the state and the local government level. Their functions are defined, protocols has been spread to all those levels. There are even area courts now to take care of those offenders in those places, you know. So it's becoming extremely respected.
All right, thanks. Yeah. Chairman Khalid, I would like you to respond to this. Because we're looking at impact assessment. Once you have deployed all these structures and all these mechanisms, what kind of behavior change are you seeing? Are people responding positively? Because as I said, and Nigerian, and indeed everybody, I mean, if you go out now, is this going to put you on the spot? I mean, you are not the one who is reckless on the street, but are people, did they imbibe this message and therefore changing their behaviors appropriately?
I think to be candid and specific, our people are difficult to deal with, sincerely. Even at the point of these serious situations, the people refuse to get sensitized. Sincerely, I'm just coming to the town now from the village. You need to see the collection of people gathering in one same place, and you begin to wonder: have these people not been sensitized? Have the government not sent message to the people? Please keep off the street. Sincerely, go to Kuba Road now. The number of people you see flying into the city, they are not even the what do you call them, the essential workers. And you hardly believe yourself whether this message from government is seeming down into the people. And so I see our people as, not truly behaving the way they should if only we want to curb this pandemic. It's ravaging the economy, it's killing lives, but yet we are still not, ready to learn lessons, sincerely.
Professor Muhammad Bello Yarima, we have not forgotten you. We're going to come to you, but we're trying to lay a background for this conversation because these are the men at the grassroots level. So let's come back to you, Salau Ozegi. You see, some local government councils are incapacitated financially and otherwise. Some are close to being dysfunctional in the real sense of it. So one would be wondering, whether your men are disposed to really engage and make direct impact on what we're talking about, palliative involved. We also had last week that a particular governor of a state said, look, or council chairman is going to cut the salary of local government staff to be able to raise funds, to do palliative measures and what have you. So how really equipped are your men in terms of finance, autonomy to function effectively and efficiently?
The activities of the local government on the COVID is also handled to at the state level. Why do I say this? The executive chairman, for example, reports to the governor. And there is a committee that has been set up. The governors, every level of government is contributing the best. But of course, the population of the country, a lot of things still has to be done. On the areas of palliatives, state governors have done, within the constraints of the resources available to the local government and the area councils, they are doing their very best. But of course, we want to believe that Nigeria, for once, should be able to do things out of the box. For example, the palliative should go into the rural areas and communities. And I think the private sector is almost showing the lead. The Dangote Foundation, for example, said, I'm going to do 5% of the population, of Nigeria population of 200 million, which is about 10 million. Out of this, what percentage is living within the rural communities? So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to distribute these palliatives through the 8,809 thereabout wards and 119,970 something 73 polling units in the country. Now you were sure that everybody within the polling unit knows who are those that are vulnerable, who are those that are poor, who are those that cannot afford to get foods and need help. At the ward levels too, they also know. The executive chairman of AMAC knows what I'm talking about. Now, those palliatives, to me, is not something that should just be federal government to maybe some specified protocols on these palliatives. So I want to believe that for once, such palliatives can go into the rural areas and communities through the wards and through the councils, you know.
All right, thank you very much, Salau. Let's now go over to our Sokoto studios, where we earlier introduced Professor Mohammed Bello Yarima. He's a professor of applied environmental microbiology and public health. As my colleague Kieran indicated, we needed to have this conversation first with the two local government operatives, one chairman of AMAC and the other who sits on the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, so that you have a background and a sense of what's playing out at the local government level. But from your perspective, what exactly are you seeing? I mean, are you seeing a bottom-up approach? Are you seeing the messages coming from the top cascading down so that there's general awareness, so that we don't have a false sense of confidence that, oh, what we are doing at the top is fine. But in the meantime, if you were to take off the lead and you go to the local councils, you'll find that we are barely scratching the surface.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. First and foremost, I want to say I'm in the studio on behalf of Nigerian Society for Microbiology, for which I'm the president. Karian did not introduce me properly, so I think I need to tell you that microbiology is a subject of study in most Nigerian universities, and the issue at stake globally is one that concerns microbiology actually. So coming back to your question, I doubt much if the top-down approach will really make any impact, especially on communities and local governments, because this disease, COVID-19, has taken us unawares. It has exposed us that we are not really ready, because the infrastructures is not a matter of palliatives, like somebody was saying. It's a matter of building infrastructures, primary health cares, day in, day out, whether there is a COVID outbreak or any, because nobody knows what outbreak is likely to come again. So I think what is important, Mr. Kingsley, is for the Nigerian government, maybe after this wahala is over, to really pay attention to building infrastructures. The health care delivery systems should be improved so that whatever comes of local governments will be able to adequately, address it. Another thing that we should try to know is that, primary health cares are very important because they deal with infectious diseases and other things, and if they are not there, really, there will be problem. The secondary healthcare systems will also suffer same and other things. So we need to be very, very frank to ourselves. We need to be truthful to ourselves that we are really not ready, and this kind of palliatives will not work in this kind of situation. The problem again is the issue of the lockdown. Everybody is now locked down. In the northern part of the country, we all know that it's not surprising you find, a typical household comprising over 20 people living in the same small house. So by the time you now put them all together under one household, chances are that they compete for the small air, small things, and that can also aggravate other infectious diseases in addition to what the COVID-19 is bringing. So I think the key thing is to have infrastructures, the healthcare systems properly working from local governments, because the large chunk of people that suffers from most of these diseases are really from local government. In the states, governments have facilities at hospitals and other things. So I think we need to do something really more than the palliative. I also want to add to what you said, Mr. Kingsley, that COVID-19 is real. It's very, very real. Like, people are still doubting as to whether it exists, but it is very, very real. You hear all sorts of theories. People are saying that the virus is constructed in a lab. It's made in a virus is a living thing. We study it under microbiology. It's a living thing, and only God has the power to create living things. Okay, so it's not just created. And if you look at the incubation period of the virus, very short. That's why it is used as a candidate biological weapon. So the fact that it is used as a biological weapon does not mean that a man can just sit down in the lab and do something like that. So.
Aspect, with, but well, accept my apologies. We will not provide with that information that you are the president of the Association of Applied Environmental Microbiology, and that brings me to a question that will appear to be professional in every sense of it, because wherever you are operating from, it is a council area, and I'd like you to let us know, if you could, what should be the role of microbiologists in all of this. What will be the component you're bringing in, either to fashion out what could be a vaccine or what could be a cure and what have you? And are you also collaborating with other allied professionals, in this area to see whether you can also make impact from your own end as microbiologists?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is the question I'm waiting for. It is unfortunate that, like I said, the Nigerian government has not given attention to domestic vaccine production. We spend large chunk of foreign exchange, money to import vaccines. Some of these vaccines, before they come in, they lose their viability and other things. And another thing, you buy vaccine from Asia or from UK, from Americas, using the strain, produced using the strains in those countries. The strains of infectious agents affecting us in Nigeria may be different. So when you bring them you don't expect them to work properly on our people. So I think, like I said before, we need to have an infrastructure where we can also isolate cases, isolate infectious agents from clinical cases, and then use them to produce vaccines. This is one area we can see viruses as being very useful to us also. They are not just deadly, because they can be used to produce vaccines against themselves. So I think in the past 2 decades or so, the National Veterinary Research Institute in VOM, they were doing this, and the facility still there. But unfortunately, some of these facilities are allowed to waste, and that no place in Nigeria today you can boast of where you can produce vaccines. So I advise that as a microbiologist, we have microbiologists all over this country. In every state of Nigeria, there are competent microbiologists that can be engaged in the production of vaccine, in the control of the virus, So that let's do it ourselves. It's always better. It creates not only jobs, but it gives all the kind of vaccines that can work for us. It's not always good to import.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed Yerima. That's microbiology. As you indicated, I think virtually every university in Nigeria has a department of microbiology. When we were in school, we used to refer to microbiology as small biology, with apologies to you. We don't know how it's very significant, but we'll come back to you later on in the course of this conversation. Back to our Abuja studios. Abdullahi Candido, chairman of AMAC. Look, earlier you did say that upon the president's initial broadcasts, and even without the president's broadcast, as local governments, you already had a sense of duty as to how to pitch in terms of combating the coronavirus, in terms of the multifarious perspectives that needed to be handled. But here we are seeing a number of structures being set up at the federal level, at the state level, and in some cases also at the local government level. Are there specific functions now that local governments have to guarantee effectiveness and efficiency? For instance, it could very well be that, fine, to the extent that you are closest to the people, we will use the local government as an instrument for contact tracing. active case search and contact tracing. We will use local governments for fumigation of public places, including markets. What I have seen, countrywide, you have state government officials being the ones who are operating. And this, of course, some persons will say, further emphasizes the emasculation of local governments. So in all seriousness, are there specific rules for local governments so that there will be proper accounting to say, look, you were supposed to have taken care of this aspect. What are the returns in terms of active case search, or how many markets have you fumigated? How many public places have you fumigated? How many persons have you, pushed out to get rid of some of these persons who are still congregating in large numbers?
Kingsley, thank you once again. I think I wouldn't like to sound inductive, but as a realist, of course, I would like to also state my case clearly. Because for one, as a chairman of a council, we keyed into the federal government's process of ensuring that all measures taken to ensure that we nip this issue in the bud was properly carried out. First, we fumigated even the secretariat where our people, work. We went to the markets to fumigate the markets, even after sensitizing the people on why they must not come together as usual, as they used to do. But as asked by you, I will not be able to, like I said, induct anybody. But as far as we are concerned, the 6 area councils in the Federal Capital Territory went out of our ways to do the needful, to ensure that our people who are our first line of contact get the message clearly, even without being told, go do this, all right? Even with the fact that the councils are completely out of fund, right? But we still have to manage and go out of our ways to do one thing or the other. And therefore, basically, like I said, in the Federal Capital Territory where we're operating, the Minister of State and her minister, that is the cabinet minister, put together are doing the best they can. Okay? They are as well coordinating the area councils. But where we are having some gaps is essentially from the area of funding. That is the reality. And that is why I didn't want to just now begin to say, let me induct anybody. The fact remains that stronger institutions must not just be found at the top there. The grassroots, for instance, the primary healthcare centers, which is the first line of contact of every villager, every hamlet person, his first point of contact is the health center. He can't begin to rush to the general hospital. You need to make sure that these centers are strong. But how did they become strong? They are supposed to be managed by the area council or local government. Does the local government have this fund? They don't. And now why are they not having this fund? What are the factors militating against that? Is because local government in the first place were put in place and they made not to even operate in the first place. Because there are several reasons why I can write a book on, by the experience of my stay in office, by next month I'll be 4 years in office. I've seen it all, that except something is done, most of these local governments in the country will collapse. They will be out of work. Because what are they, why just having secretariat that is not functioning? That is the reality. Apart from paying salary, which I get from the federation allocation, if there's any way I should collect revenue, there's a lot of fractions there. A lot of, conflict between you and your central government. And that is what is, government has, constitution has defined what you should do and what the federal government and state government should do. But as far as the local governments are concerned, they're undermined. Okay? No respect to the local councils. And that is where we have government for the people as the grassroots. So for me sincerely, this COVID effort that we're putting, okay, will have recorded much success if the local councils are really seen to be working. We're only left now to be, okay, go and provide palliative. Like the professor said, if you provide palliative to the people, you give them food. This food, there's no government on earth that can ever feed these people 100%. No government. Mm. And this serious situation is just like a war. We are just like a war situation. Exactly. During the war, does anybody wait for somebody to come and give him food? No. You need to make sure that you protect yourself. This is the situation. Indeed, this is even a war that is more aggressive than the combatant fighting. So we need to secure ourselves first. But how do we now do that if we don't have strong institutions? We would have gotten this strong institution if the local governments are really allowed to operate. That is one of the things I'm seeing.
Yeah, I want to appreciate this so much, because you have hit the head of the nail, where you have made it so clear, because we want to understand the actual involvement of council areas, whether they are capacitated to do that or incapacitated to do that. But let me tell you this, one we have in my village where I come from, the Akamoya in Eziago council area of Enugu State, the member of House of Assembly who comes from my community now decided to, organize some young men, and they opened a platform and sent messages across to all of us, both to the diaspora and nationally, and we're making contributions for this on this palliative aspect. Now, if the council area in my place is functional, we wouldn't have business going into that. So we started to self-help. Right, and that is what it is. I'm coming back to you, because what Abdullahi Candido said is very apt, because a council area cannot function effectively in a democratic setting unless it is recognized as a tier of government that should have its funds to function. Because apparently what is happening now is that you rely almost 100% on state governments to, of course, take even in terms of information dissemination to the council areas, which should be the primary assignment of council areas. What about the councillors? What about the councillors that we have in all these council areas? How are they engaged? How are they engaged with their wards? Because there are people that elected them to office in the first place. And so let us get it clear now. We have 774 council areas in Nigeria. And what we're talking about is the country areas having the capacity in terms of also being able to provide some infrastructure like the social amenities, water. We're talking about fumigation. When we talk about hygiene, talk about water. Are they provided? Whose duty is it to do that? The state or council areas. Is the council area empowered to do that? So these are some complex questions arising from the dysfunctionality of majority of council areas in Nigeria.
Obviously, there are some challenges with the local government and council areas that has been identified by the Honorable here. But something is being done from the point of view of the PTF. For example, they expected that every local government should have a sensitization or implementation committee, and they monitor with certain KPIs, and almost 58% of the local government are complying. Of course, yes, funds is always a constraint. But I want to believe that because all executive chairmen of local government are also members of the state implementation committee, they will be able to address to that structure. Of course, that does not exclude looking for fundings, because we know the population that we have, the challenges are very overwhelming. It was not expected. Nobody knew by December that we would be in this kind of social or health problem, as well as even economy globally. So some local government are doing their very best, just like you've said. Within the constraints of resources available to them, they're doing a lot. The PTF, for example, has the responsibilities to say, okay, these are materials for sensitization. This is the strategy to reach the people. And they watch like the behavioral change of the people. How are they complying? And they keep changing those information to mobilize and sensitize them. And some copies, for example, of posters or hand cards or whatever it is, may be produced from the central point through the NOA. A lot of agencies, government agencies, are involved in this whole pandemic control. The NOA, for example, Nigerian National Orientation Agencies are involved. The NCDC, they are involved. Everybody to the local level are involved in one form of activity or the other to curtail the spread. So obviously, something is being done at the local government level. Either it's coming from the federal government, it's coming from the state government, the local government itself, or the donor agencies or other stakeholders that have been coming. For example, we have to preach not even people waiting for palliative alone, for people to help their neighbors. You know, this is an African setup, and we know, an African setting, we know that we help ourselves. You know, so those are the things we're preaching.
Salah, just before we go on this short break, see, the structure you talked about is fine. Those are bureaucratic setups. We're talking about efficiency and effectiveness.
Exactly.
Efficiency and effectiveness. Look, you can say, go and sensitize. Yeah. That's okay. You go out, you take a megaphone and speak to people. Yeah. If nothing changes, it means that you haven't done your job. You have to go back.
A lot has changed.
No, just hang on. If a lot has changed, then we won't be seeing the kind of things that we are seeing. I'm sure you know what's happening in Kano. Yeah. I'm sure you also know what's happening in parts of Lagos, even here in the Federal Capital Territory, and indeed elsewhere in the country. There's no measurement, so we cannot say that a lot has changed. Now, because the country has been, most parts of the country, we've been on lockdown for 4 weeks now. So are we going to be on another lockdown for another 4 weeks before we begin to kick in? I asked the chairman of AMAC, is the local government system being co-opted for contact tracing? Yes. Must you have special skills for contact tracing? You know, was the local government being co-opted for other, critical aspects? You don't have to be a health personnel, before you get co-opted. We're just saying use the instrumentality of that tier of government to further the ends of the fight against COVID-19.
Or have the state governments usurped your responsibility in this regard?
Yeah. You know, that is sorted out. For example, you have the primary health centers, like you have said, and they have health officers. In Lagos, I'm very much aware, they've been moving from house to house and community to communities, and that is why the numbers are increasing. And they use the local government health officers to do that. You understand? It's not just the structure. Initially, when this thing started, there were a lot of biases that were adduced to it. Religious bias, we must attend our mosque services, we must attend our church services and all of that. Until the traditional rulers, the religious clerics who are domiciled within the local government communities were brought together and sensitized. And the Sultan of Sokoto, for example, made a statement. And it began to be obeyed. And of course, there must be penalties, some sanctions for those who are going to disobey. And that's why you have seen imams, even in Abuja here, about 3 imams were prosecuted. So because of violating the orders of not gathering and all of that. So apart from the structures are working, and there are some key performance indicators that have been set to also measure what they are doing.
Okay.
Of course, the financial constraint is there.
All right. Thank you, Nuhu Ozige. We've heard from me, and of course, the council chairman here with us, and of course, Nigerians who are watching this program have the opportunity of understanding where we're coming from this morning, why the topic in the first place, the role of local government areas in the fight against COVID-19. At the moment, we will take a short break. When we get back, the conversation continues.
It's time of despair. Our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country Nigeria, a chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Your perfect family may be under threat by germs. Germs can cause infectious diseases like diarrhea, typhoid, and flu. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. In Nigeria, tens of thousands of children under the age of 5 have died due to diarrhea caused by germs. These illness-causing germs are everywhere. Dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes, in unclean bathing water. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capful. For surface cleaning, for first aid, for your laundry, in your bathing water, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol with aloe vera. Soothing aloe vera, the power of Dettol, which is soft on skin and hard on germs. Be Dettol Sure.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide. Don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long. Live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 22 55 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Wetin be this coronavirus thing? Na true?
You see this coronavirus wey be COVID-19. Na the whole world palava, and e don dey kill many people for China, Italy, UK, US, Spain, and even for other countries dem.
Okay, wetin come be the reason wey dem say make everybody tanda for house?
Na because if e dey waka pium go carry am from person wey don get am, you go carry come give your family dem. Na so the thing take dey kill other people for other country.
Okay, wetin come be that social distancing sef?
You see social distance. Now make we no come close because this thing na from air and touch now we dey contact am. We suppose dey at least 6 foot away from each other every time.
So okay, no be only to wash your hand and to sanitize them alone.
Make we no take this washing of hand thing take play but make we come together, join hand as we take pursue Ebola, pursue this coronavirus. Make we be each other keepers now.
Right.
Well, okay. Quickly, we have to go back to Professor Yerima.
Yerima, that's right.
Yes, he's the president, Nigerian Society for Microbiologists. Prof, let's come back to you. You told us a short while ago that the vaccine production requires a complex, sophisticated, and well-equipped infrastructure to function. And what has been the problem or the challenge which led to Nigeria's inability to produce vaccine in the past is lack of such infrastructure. And on the part of what's going on globally with respect to COVID-19, Bill Gates presently is sponsoring 7 different laboratories across the globe with the intention of either any of them coming up with a vaccine that would be appropriate to address the issue of COVID-19. Now, back to Nigeria here, you have boasted that we have microbiologists across the country. What could be possible at this point in time for Nigeria to engage you and your colleagues in terms of looking inwards to see what we can do locally here, even if it's not synthetic, even if it's a herbal approach to that? What can be done now to stimulate your association to get into action?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kerian. I did not say it's a complex. It's not a rocket science to make a vaccine. Very simple technique you need. Once you have the infectious agents, you have some extracts that serve as antigenics. You produce them in large mass, and then you make some clinical trials. What I'm saying, the advantage of doing that is that these organisms are from our local environments, and they are actually the strain that is causing the problem. So the vaccine at the end of the day will work well for everybody in Nigeria. Again, the Nigerian Society for Microbiology actually can boast of, competent and brainy clinical microbiologists that can do all that. So what is important is for the government to really recognize us. The important government agencies is the NCDC, the Federal Ministry of Health, and all those other agencies that are responsible for healthcare delivery. I must make a confession. Before the lockdown, we tried to meet with the DG. DG was trying to even invite us, the DG and CDC, but actually we couldn't meet him. But I think now it's timely. Immediately after the lockdown, we will approach him. We will approach Federal Minister of Health. We will talk. I think even the task force that they have just constituted, I think from what the other person has said, you don't make committees without involving an expert, at least a single expert in the committee. He can give that expert advice so that you can do whatever you want. But where you assemble people that doesn't have the expertise, that doesn't even know that, our problem can be solved by ourselves through science, because we really have to respect science. It's not just all about prayers. Yeah, prayers are wonderful, but God will answer our prayers through very good practice of science. So vaccine production is one good practice of science. And we'll be lucky if the Nigerian government can attract such a grant from Belinda and Gates, so that we can all come together. We have wonderful other societies like, Biosafety Management Agency. I know the competent leader is there. We have the NIPSA, Nigerian Biosafety Management Agency. We have Medical Lab, Association of Nigeria. I think once you put these professionals together, microbiologists can lead and bring solutions to all this problem. It's not a rocket science, actually.
I want to stay with you, Professor Yerima, because part of what we are hearing in some parts of the country is to say, okay, now this should be the onset of the farming season, and therefore a lockdown will be ill-advised because of the impact it might have on the nation's food security. Tell us something from a microbiology perspective, creating a dichotomy between urban and rural areas. You have population aggregating more in the urban areas, and therefore, as a layperson, one would say that the risk of transmission might be a bit higher because person-to-person contact is more frequent. But in the rural areas where the population is perhaps sparse, what are the risk factors in terms of also the frequency of transmission? What can one envisage in those rural communities where they still go to farms and so on and so forth? And therefore, what kind of communication messages ought to go to them so that even as they carry on their activities, they don't then become another risk group where the numbers of fatalities just might begin to rise?
Thank you. I think there are a lot of stories. You hear a lot of stories. And, in my own opinion, I feel that there is a breach in the lockdown itself. People travel interstates, they pay small money to police, and they take the bush road. And like the chairman Amak also said, people are simply stubborn. They don't simply obey these laws of lockdown. And the lockdown itself, the facilities, the housing, systems in Nigeria is so congested. So in my own opinion, the more you lock down people like that, the more you encourage other infections. Even when they say you don't pray in congregation, you don't do this, or you keep a distance of 2-3. You see, coronavirus is an airborne, and it's a very light particle of a virus. So where there is a fan, the fan can propel it, or the air can carry it to very long distances. You could recall during Hamatan, this is how diseases are transported from the Arabian countries and the Sahara to up to Sokoto here, for example. So long as a disease is airborne, it's very difficult to curtail. I think what is important is to observe, hygiene and all this. But all these social distances of 3-4 meters, you keep people unnecessarily, and the social amenities are not there. The provision of food and what I mean that's where I see government has failed. Everyone has to provide for himself. If you are a salary earner, you have to wait for the salary to come and then you buy food and other things. But I think government should try to do something. I think we are learning a lot of lessons from COVID-19. So I am sure after COVID-19, the government can sit down and see how they can make some social interventions and make infrastructures, like I said, in local government. Because in those days, we all know we have sanitary officers that go from nook and crannies of every community in local governments to make sure that gutters are properly discharged in the sewerage system. But all these officers are not there. We have inspectors that will go to abattoir. Even before an animal is slaughtered, they have to assess its health status before it is actually slaughtered. But what is happening today? Most of the diseased animals, including camels, cows, and cattle, and they are diseased and they are just slaughtered anyhow. And these viral diseases are also zoonotic in nature. They can be transmitted also from animals to man. So I think it's a concern where you now allow all these offices in the local government. In fact, the most important officers in the local government now are the chairman, probably the secretary, and the treasurer. You hardly find anybody except at the end of the month when salaries are to be paid. And we usually see in every allocation committee, federal allocation committee, local governments are giving certain billions of naira, and I wonder how these things cannot be taken to local governments for chairmen on their own to begin to now build primary health centers, to build disease prevention centers and other things. I think it is important to do the right thing. It is important for government to come back and do the right thing. We expect this government, this particular government, to do that.
I think I have one takeaway from what you have explained, and that has to do with the fact that vaccine production is not a rocket science kind of science, that it is possible in Nigeria. And many Nigerians will also be wondering why for over the years Nigeria has not been able to come up with any kind of vaccine, to actually address some of the diseases that we have in the tropical Africa, not just Nigeria alone. We thank you. But there's another clarification, Kingsley, that I was not so clear about. He talked about corona being airborne. Is it air transported or airborne? I wonder the difference between the two, because my little understanding, if it's airborne, that means as you get around, you could just contact it. But if it's air transported, that would be more understandable. I'm not sure. I hope I'm right here, because when it's airborne, that means we're all in big trouble. All right, thank you for
I think it's important for Professor Yarima to clarify
to respond to that, yes.
Professor Yarima, could you clarify that?
We look at the viruses. We have foodborne viruses, we have waterborne viruses, and the coronavirus affects the respiratory tract. The respiratory tract is responsible for inhalation of air and bringing out contaminated air. So when an infected person sneezes or coughs, he also throws these aerosols into the air. So it remains in the air for a while until when it gets a surface to land. And that's why we said it can be carried by air. Anything that is carried by air, I think, is airborne, so to say. And I told you that a number of viruses are also obtained from gutters, where they live in some small living organisms. There was an EU-sponsored research where poliovirus, for example, all the gutters, in some parts of Nigeria, were collected, and poliovirus were isolated from such gutters and other things. So that is the explanation. Other things.
Some tweets. I think it might be advisable for us to
take the tweets now
before we get the closing thoughts of our guests. Francis Obi has this tweet. It says local governments are closest to the people and could be used for effective dissemination of information, but they should be financially supported.
All right, Mutana Farouk says local governments could have played significant roles in the fight against coronavirus if they really exist in terms of political mandates and governance. For me, local governments in Nigeria are not more than political realms which are actively featured on the pages of fiscal budget.
Now, Augustine, that's the total handle. If the local government system in Nigeria were effective and efficient, it would have been the best option in the fight against COVID-19. Unfortunately, it is not, and therefore may not really do much in providing services to the people at the micro level.
Emeka says, can you in that panel mention any local government that is functional? The local government is a scam where the state governors usurp the powers and the allocation for their selfish ends.
Okay, Chris Simeon tweet says political actors and other stakeholders at the local governments should carry out sensitization program where the local people get enlightened and then can take precautions.
All right, Innocent Yawal James says the campaign against COVID-19 ought to have started from local government level because they made up the states, but mechanisms weren't in place to do that. The best way is to aggressively cover the local government with awareness of COVID-19 as it's not too late to do that.
All right, so those are the tweets that we're taking in the meantime, and I just wanted to bring in Salahu Nuhu Ziggy again. What is your interface with the presidential task force? How do you get back to the 774 local governments? I mean, because if you are their eye and your eyes and their ears at that committee level, what is the interface? How do they get back to them? And what are you reporting back to the PTF in terms of either the mandates that have been given by the PTF or in terms of resources to even carry out their own activities relative to COVID-19?
Thank you very much. I'm representing the local governments, and we carry what our demands are towards curtailing the COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, to the rural communities and all that. Every strategy also that are initiated at the PTF level are communicated to the national president of the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, who is a local government chairman in Lagos. And he will disseminate that to all the Algon chairs of each of the states from time to time. I provide data, for example, of the primary health centers, which before now we've been looking at how they can be well equipped to do those functions the chairman of AMAC has just mentioned, because those are structures on ground already that we can make the best use of to get a very quick result. We give them all those informations so that they can provide from the federal level those equipments that are required. And whatever materials, the information, communication, and educational materials towards the preventive measures of these diseases are produced by the NDC through the risk communication and community engagement team, and that is also communicated and copies, whether it's a radio jingle, whether it's a poster or whatever print medium, will be sent to, copies will be sent to the national president, who will also circulate among the members.
Okay, well, we've actually come to the end of this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I hope for those of us who are part of the program will appreciate the fact that it's a very good topic which has been robustly discussed. I would like to appreciate Nuhu Ziggy, or Salahu Nuhu Ziggy, who is a member representing the 774 council areas at the task force. He's also the director of finance and accounts for the Association of Nigerian Local Government Areas. That's Algon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Abdullahi Adamu Candido, Chairman, Abuja Municipal Area Council. It's been a pleasure hosting you this morning.
Thank you very much.
And from Sokoto Studio, we had Professor Mohammed Bello Yarima, Professor of Applied Environmental Microbiology and Public Health. Thank you for your insights on the show today. Well, next, let's go to sports.